And then it wants the parent's email address. So we're going to put parent email address. And it's asking the same type of demographic questions. So, have your parents lived in Michigan for the last 5 years? Part of the Michigan tuition grant thing is you and your parents both have to be Michigan residents for at least 2 years. So that's part of why I asked these questions. So we're just going to say yes. Okay, now we're going to get into kind of a trickier area. This wants to know your parents' number of family members in 2012-13, household size. So if you're not sure who is considered a family member, you can click this and it will give you a little questionnaire. Family members, 90% of the time, are mom, dad, and their dependent children that actually live there and are under 25 years old. A student, if you have a grandparent living with you or an aunt or an uncle, things like that, when you're looking at the household size, you have to keep in mind that do you provide 50% support for those people? So we'll have a lot of people who have like grandparents living with them. But if grandparents get Social Security or a pension and money that would actually fund their own living, they're not to be counted here. It's only anybody that the family, the household, provides more than 50% of the support for that year. And when they're talking about year, it's always it's the year from July to the following June, the academic year for the FAFSA. So that's what they're talking about here. So let's say so this is the helpful thing here. So you're saying your parents or your parent and stepdad based on their marital status, because I said my parents are married, and then me. So it's already going to add 2 for my parents, 1 for me. Now it wants to know your parents' other children if your parents provide more than half of their support from July 1st through June 30th, or these children can answer no to every dependency status question on the FAFSA. So what that means is if a student is 20 years old and doesn't necessarily live at home, but they're under 24, they would technically, by FAFSA's rules, be considered dependent on the parents. We can count them in the household. It's beneficial to count more people in the household because it helps bring down, it looks at your income and says, well, they have this many people and only this much income. So it's beneficial, but you need to do it by the rules here. So either if you're supporting half of their incomes, if you have a child who's 26 and you pay for all their stuff, technically they're not a dependent on the FAFSA. They'd be independent on their own, but you can count them on here because you can prove you support them. But children, that's the tricky area there, because the children who, we'll have lots of students who, I have 2 siblings, but none of us live at home, because they're all technically dependent on the FAFSA, they can all be counted in the household. Does that make sense? Okay. So we're going to put, I have 2 siblings. So then it wants other people, if they now live with your parents, these are and, so if they now live with your parents, and your parents provide more than half of their support, and your parents will continue to provide more than half of their support between July 1st and June 30th. So we're going to say nobody else lives with us, that's 0 people, and it will calculate it for you. So now we have 5 in our household. The next question is how many people in your parents' household will be college students during that year, July 1st through June 30th. This is a tricky question, so you're going to always include the student. Any siblings that are in school, anyone that you've included in the household as siblings, you can include in the member of college, but you never include yourselves. Parents are never included in the student's household. So other people in your parents' household only if they will attend college. So right here it says do not include the parents, your parents in this number. So the parents are never included in the student's number. But now if you're a parent and you're going to school, you can include the students in your number. So it's kind of a tricky area because we have a lot of parents now that are going back to school. So on their FAFSA, they get the benefit of saying, yeah, and my dependent child is going to school. But on the kids' FAFSA, you don't get to, it's kind of like a double dipping thing because on your FAFSA, you'd be benefited from it, so you can't do it on both FAFSAs. So you never include the parents in the student's number in college. So we're going to put just me is in college. So this is, oh, I didn't put enough here. So they could always prompt you. I don't really do FAFSA that often, so. Okay, so now If you notice up here at the top, we've gone through student demographics, school selection, dependency status, and now we have the parent, and now we're in financial information. It's going to first talk about parent financial information, and then student financial information. If a student worked at all, they have to list that in the amount of money. If they're not required to file, that's fine. They can choose not required to file, but they have to put whatever wages they earned, if it's $500, $1,000, wages from work. It doesn't have to be, so let's put all that in there. It doesn't have to be like, I mowed the lawn and my dad gave me $10. We don't have to count that money, but if they actually had a job and worked, that needs to go in here. So the first question, for 2011, have your parents completed their tax return? So what you're gonna say, for this year, we're going to say they will file, because we're assuming all of you guys are going to do it in January or February. If we go will file and do the next page, it's giving us a prompt because right now we're after the tax deadline for this year, so it's saying, hey, they should have done their taxes by now, so are you sure they didn't do their taxes? So we're going to continue on. It'll still let you continue because, they know people have extensions. So click, I have to click OK right here, and then continue. So this is where you're going to do the estimation of everything. So when you're saying will file and estimating, it's never going to prompt you to do the IRS data retrieval because it thinks you haven't filed. So you're going to go right here, what type of income or tax return did they do? You're going to answer these questions. They filed the 1040. What is your parent's AGI? Now this over here in this situation is very helpful because if you actually have the taxes in front of you or you're using last year's taxes, it tells you on an IRS form 1040, use line 37. On a 1040A, use line 21. On a 1040EZ, use line 4. So it tells you all of that right here and is very helpful. If you're using W-2s or something like that, you just kind of have to estimate. So let's estimate that their AGI was 50,000. Now this is, what did your parents earn from work? Again, over here, it will walk you through it. On the W-2, it's boxes numbers 1 and 8. If your parent, and this is the tax information, every line, so it walks you through it all. It's very important with wages, like you don't include, it's really just business income or farm income and actual income earned from work. It's not pensions, it's not unemployment, it's not Social Security, none of that is income earned from work. So let's say dad made 30, Mom made 20. As of today, are either of your parents a dislocated worker? Over here is going to go through the detail about a dislocated worker. A person may be considered a dislocated worker if he or she is receiving unemployment benefits due to being laid off, he has been laid off or received a layoff notice from a job, was self-employed but is now unemployed, or is a displaced homemaker. So we're going to say no, they're both working. If that is the case, if they are a dislocated worker, it doesn't take asset information into question because it kind of gives you like a little leeway there. If you're a dislocated worker, it's kind of like a little helper there. Okay, so this is the parent financial information continued. So we're gonna, if you enter the amount of income tax, again, it tells you over here what line it's on. So we're gonna enter the income tax. Parents' exemptions, they claimed all 5 of us. This is additional financial information and untaxed incomes down here. If you click on any of these, it will tell you exactly what it is over here. So check the box if your parents received education credits, and then you put the dollar amount here. Most people, and you can do the same thing for child support paid, this is all, the top part is things that you received that were kind of beneficial. So any of these credits, tax credits, grant or scholarship aid reported to the IRS. A lot of students will automatically stick all of their federal grants and school in here. This is only what you report to the IRS as part of your income, and you pay taxes on it. So for most students, they'll have 0 here. The only time it happens is if, like a lot of students who go to community college and get the federal Pell Grant, their Pell Grant may cover their full tuition and get a refund back. That amount you get refunded back to you is supposed to be included on the 1040 and the tax return as income. You're supposed to pay taxes on it. A lot of students don't do taxes, so it ends up not happening. But that's the only thing you can report in this box. Combat pay, cooperative education program learnings, any of these things here. Untaxed income would be income paid to your tax-deferred pension, IRA deductions and payments to self-employed SEP. So there's multiple things here. Child support received. Child support received and paid is obviously not on your taxes. You would just know those amounts. Tax exempt interest income is on your tax return. And it tells you what line's on. All these kind of things, most of these are on the tax return. And then this is the asset question for the parent. So it takes your income and your housing situation and everything like that and decides, do you have more than this amount of money? If you say yes, it's going to ask for detailed asset questions, asking how much money you have in your checking and savings, in investments, in business. If you say no, so that's what it would do here, checking and savings, investment, business. Or you can say, okay, we don't have over 37,000. When you're looking at assets here, current assets, you don't count your 401k. Retirement savings, that kind of stuff, you don't count. It's money in cash savings and checking accounts, businesses, investment farms. They do not include your own home. Now, if you have a second home, you include that, but you only include the value after like what debt you have on it. So if you have a second home but you have a mortgage and it's worth less than your mortgage, you don't count that as any kind of asset. You don't count any UGMA accounts or UTMA accounts. You don't count the value of life insurance, retirement plans, those kind of things. So it would just be looking at the 37.5, do we have that in investments and savings? So we're going to say no. We're going to continue.
How's that information verified?
The assets? It's really self-declaration, so once you put it on there, they don't really verify it. If you are selected for verification, they can ask you to fill out what's called the asset worksheet, but again, it's the same thing. I always tell people, what you put on here is going to the federal government, so just keep in mind that, it is the government, even though it seems like it's. So if you just don't check any of those. So now we're going to the student tax information. It's the same questions that have the parent tax information. For the student, so I can show you, I'm going to say we already completed, just so I can show you what it would look like. This says you may be able to use the IRS data retrieval tool to view and transfer your tax information from the IRS. So if you check any of these, you won't be eligible. So if you filed an amended return, you can't use the tax return transcript. If you filed like today, you can't do it. If you filed Puerto Rican or foreign tax return, you can't do it either. So we're going to choose none of the above. I'm not actually going to do this because I don't have a real person in here, but all you do here is enter your PIN number, which you had before, and click link to the IRS. When you do that, it's going to open up a new window to the IRS, and it's going to ask you to put your information in your social and your address, and then and the address sheet is the address you did your taxes with. So if you've moved since then, still put the address you did your taxes with. It's going to just prompt you, and then it's going to show you all the answers it's going to change, and import it right to the FAFSA. So all that stuff we just did answering all those questions will be totally skipped, because it'll just import it right from the taxes. So that's what you would do here. We're going to say we filed recently because we can't actually do that. And you can do that for both the parent and the student if the student filed, but like I said, you have to wait at least 2 weeks after you file. But you can always do it estimated and go back and change it. So we're going to say the student, we're going to go back here and instead of saying already completed, we're going to say the student's not going to file because they didn't make any income. So now all it wants to know is the wages question. So how much did you make from wages, from working salaries, tips, etc. If you get selected for verification and a student made wages but didn't do a tax return, all you'll need to provide the school with is the copy of their W-2 along with your tax stuff. So we're going to say he actually didn't work, made no money. Now it's asking those same questions. Did the student get any child support paid to them, grant or scholarship paid forward to the IRS? Typically, if they're not filing and they make no income, all of these are no. But that's just how that is. And they always ask the student's assets. It doesn't do that asset question thing. So this is just an estimate. You don't have to go look up their accounts and get the exact dollar amounts. You can estimate, okay, right now they have $200 in their checking account, they have no investment money, and they have no business money or farm money. So you can just kind of estimate these. For you as well, you can estimate. It's as of the day you do the taxes, and you can use estimations. You don't have to feel like you have to go look up your accounts and do exact measurements. Okay, that is it. The FAFSA is now completely done. All you have to do here Are you a preparer? That's if you have to pay somebody else to do it for you, so just say no. And you're always gonna click sign electronically with a PIN. You have the option to print it and mail it to them, but when you do that, they say the time frame for processing is like 10 to 12 weeks. So I don't know why anyone would ever do that when you have the PIN number. So the top part is the student. Student's information is right here. You put the student PIN number in, click sign. We're gonna agree to the terms and conditions. And we're gonna do the same thing for the parent. How will the parent provide your signature? And you're gonna say sign electronically with my PIN. Whether you're the mom or the dad, like I said, only one of you has to get a PIN number. So we can say we're the mom, put my PIN number in, click sign, and we agree. And all you have to do is hit submit, and you are good to go with the FAFSA. So, does anyone have any questions? I know it's kind of a lot.
I have a PIN number from probably 8 or 10 years ago.
It should still be valid. If you ever had a PIN number,
It said earlier it asked for a password. I don't remember the password.
no, the password, no, that password is the one we set up when we started the FAFSA. When I very first started the FAFSA, it gave me a PIN number yet. So you won't have to know a password from a long time ago. It's just your PIN number. You can go onto the PIN website and log in, and then if you know your PIN number, you can say reset it and choose a different PIN number, yes. But if you ever had a different PIN number for yourself going to college or for a different student going to college, your PIN number is still the same. You only ever have to get one PIN number. So that's that. Does anyone have any other questions for FAFSA? Go ahead. Right. Right. We can go back there. It's really just your cash, any investment income you have. So if you have stocks, bonds, an extra house that you have investment money in, things like that, and then business or farm net like income. But it's all net worth. So if you have, a house that's mortgaged more than it's worth, you have no, net worth in that home. You have a second home, not your personal home. No, unfortunately it doesn't.
Are you more likely to get financial aid if you live on campus or at home, or does that not matter?
It really doesn't matter because it looks at how your financial aid is determined is, it takes this entire financial picture, it does, it's basically a financial snapshot and your household size and everything like that, and gives you what's called an estimated family contribution, which everyone refers to as an EFC. That's what determines what you're eligible for. That, along with the school's cost of attendance, determines it. Because you take your budget, whatever the budget the school gives you, and subtracts out that EFC, and then that's the need. So for need-based aid, grant aid, that kind of stuff, it all goes into that need. You can never exceed that need. And if your EFC is below 5,000, that's what makes you eligible for Pell Grant and stuff like that. So it's really, the only thing that's different is like on campus for us, our budgets are higher for on campus than someone living with a parent because they have more costs. So your budget will be higher, so your need might be different. It might change that way, but for the most part, it doesn't affect Pell Grant, sub, unsub, that kind of stuff.
If you are considering living on campus and then decide that you don't, does that change any?
It would change the award. Like at our school, the only thing it's going to change on the student's award is we give them a Michigan resident campus grant of $600 a term for living on campus. So someone who chooses to move off campus, their budget goes down a little bit and they lose that grant. The only way a student ever really gets the budget, that's like all the way to their max financial aid, is if either the parent takes a large parent loan or the student takes a large private loan. It's always more funds than they need. It always ends up with refunds going back to them. But so it doesn't really affect them too bad. It doesn't really change it that much. And just if they change their mind after their award's already done, you need to contact the school so they can update the award and not charge them for housing if they're not going to live on campus.
How does the, if you have like MET,
Matt?
Michigan Educational Trust, does that affect the application?
It typically doesn't. What the MET is the value, it's a really weird calculation for the value of it, but you can count it as an asset, but it counts to the person who's a custodian on it. So it's not necessarily in the student's name. Any assets you put under the student's name or any income they make is going to, I don't want to say negatively, but kind of in a way affect them, because what they assume is the student's normal cost of living well-being is the parent's responsible in taking care of that. So any income or assets the student has or makes, they assume can go to pay for their education. So it gets kind of tricky. Like, we'll have students who made 7 or 8 grand, and their EFC will go up 5, 6 grand because it thinks everything they made, they can just pay the education. So it's just one of those areas. So like, if you put that net under the student side, it will change the EFC. Typically, when you count it for the custodian, who's normally the parent on the account, it doesn't necessarily affect it as drastically. Mm-hmm.
Is a 529 trust an asset for the student or the parent?
It's just a trust, but it's in their name. When can they access it? That's the tricky part. Can they access it like right now?
It's the 529.
I don't know what the 529 is.
Yeah,
Oh, the college, like the Met, like one of those funds. Good question. Let's try and go back. That it's the same kind of situation for any of those. Are you going to cash it out and use it on the student's account like back term?
That's what it's for.
Right, but like you're not going to cash the whole thing out, right? Or do you?
Good.
You could.
It's a tax is a free
Savings account.
way
For education.
You could have been putting money in all along, it's a tax deferred, tax-free investment.
I would say you should count that on the parent side because it was your income that was going into it. That's where I would count it. But like our student accounting office handles all those payments. The problem is you don't want to get double hit. When those payments come into the student's account, it counts as a resource on their financial aid. So we view all those. That's the only end I see it on, is it shows up from student accounting that it was a resource and it shows it was a savings payment. So it counts in that way. It counts to affect the financial aid that way. So whatever you're going to use that year, I wouldn't count as an asset for either of you. And then for what I would put it under you guys. The same thing for like the mat, we would encourage to put it on like just technically custodian side. But no, it's in their name. Yes.
if a student is awarded a fafsa loan, and where's the liability set for that? Who's liable for that loan? The student or the parent?
The student. The student loans that they can get on their own are the Stafford subsidized and unsubsidized loans. They're the student's loans on their own in just their name. If you do a private loan, most of the students will need co-signers, and then you're both liable for those. And a Parent Plus loan is a loan for the student's education, but it is 100% in the parent's name, and the parents are liable for that. The only way a student can get like more loans is doing like the private loan, but usually the parents end up co-signing for those. Mhm.
Can you reiterate again, please, this verification process?
Yeah.
Because I know all these
A lot of people, they always say randomly 30%, but if you ever put something where like you put I made 50 grand and my taxes were 50 grand, you'll likely get selected then because obviously that's a red flag and an error. How it works is you'll get notification. Actually, when you complete the FAFSA, it'll tell you, hey, you were selected for verification. But the school will send you out information as well. The verification worksheet, which I can probably show you ours. It's just an easy one page. It asks questions about your household size, and the number in college, those things. Oh, here. All schools are probably going to look similar because the government gives us like a starting format to go with. So this is what ours looks like. It's just the student information right at the top, and then this is the household information. So it's the same information you put on the FAFSA, asking the name of everybody in the household, their ages, and if they're going to college. There's a question on here about child support. Do you receive child support? Yes or no? And then it wants to know if you paid child support, who was it for? And then these are the questions about, and our form tells you exactly what you need. So if this part D is for the student, so if you check off the student filed or will file, it tells you need to update your FAFSA, because that's your two options for the tax information. Once you get selected for verification, you have to fill out this form entirely and turn it in, and you have two options for the tax information. to either log onto your FAFSA and use the IRS data retrieval to update the tax information if you haven't already used it, or to actually go to irs.gov or call the IRS and order a tax return transcript and then submit it to the school. For the most part, this is the very first year this tax retrieval thing is an option, and I have not seen many students that have used the tax retrieval process up front that got selected for verification. Most of the ones that do it are ones who did not use it up front, and in that case, most of them end up logging back on, updating their FAFSA with the data retrieval, and then printing off this one worksheet and turning it in. So it makes it way easier if you use that IRS data retrieval. The IRS, if you order a tax return transcript from them, it takes like 5 to 10 business days for them to send it to you. If you've moved, they always send it to the address you filed your taxes with. So if you've moved or changed your address, you'll never get it. So you have to call them and deal with the hassle of trying to get a hold of somebody to send you one. But once we get all the documentation from you, we verify everything, make any changes that need to be made, and then your award package will be done at that point.
Is that, transcript, is that an IRS copy or that you submit to them?
Yeah.
And not a photocopy of our, you can't use a photocopy or?
No, they used to, up until this year, we always just used photocopies of 1040s, and it was the easiest way to do things. Now, they require you to actually, once they've processed it, they do this printout. It looks different, and it's IRS transcript printout of their, so their results after your tax return. Yeah, you can go downtown and pick up a copy. It has to be sealed or stamped by them, and some schools get weird about handling that. I'm on a listserv, and some schools won't accept that. They'll only accept the one that's in the mail. So we're not really that stringent on it as long as it's from the IRS and it's your tax return transcript. We take it. We just can't take the actual copies of taxes anymore. But if you use the tax return retrieval, if you're eligible, it makes it way easier. Does anybody else have any other questions? Out-of-state schools, you want to contact their school and find out if they have anything for you. The programs that we need the private school listed first is because it's a Michigan fund. If a student goes out of Michigan, they can't get that money. Just like if a student came here from Pennsylvania, they can't get the Michigan tuition grant. So it has to be, a resident of the state. So I would, if they're ever interested in going anywhere, I would call those schools and find out their specific deadlines, look on their website and find out if they have any different kind of deadlines or anything.
So you indicated the dates for getting this filed with the report. So let's say I do this at the beginning of February, I have all my tax return information, but I have to file my return.
Mm-hmm.
So I should, let's say, put it in February, but then when I file my return, so in March, I should go back and
I would.
link it with the, and so what information do they actually use? Do they wait for me to do that, or they can use my estimated number, the estimated date that I put that in, and what if it's wildly off?
Right, it depends on where you're at in the process. If you did your FAFSA as estimated in January and you updated it in February or March before the student's financial aid award was done, and updated it and it changed things, they would get the newest one. As long as you don't change the school codes, like we can have a student who has 15 different applications because they keep updating it and keep changing it. Once their award's done, if you make changes to the FAFSA, I would just contact the school and let them know. They're going to get a copy of it either way, but usually it's a longer process for like us to go back and review new FAFSAs. That, like, if a student's awarded and done and good to go, and then a new FAFSA comes in, it's not as quick of a process like to review it as you may want it to be to get your actual changes. Does that make sense? I would always recommend going back and updating it just because it would may avoid your chances of getting selected for verification. And you're supposed to put your active data in there. So.
What were the ramifications if you had it, don't file until October?
The ramifications? I mean, it just, like you saw how, yeah, just use your estimates. The only problem is if you got selected for verification and you don't file, no financial aid will pay to your student's account, federal or state aid, until you get them your tax returns and stuff like that. So if you do it and you do it estimated and you don't get selected for verification, it'll all go through like normal. But the only time it'll be an issue is if you were selected for verification. Okay. Well, I'll stay here for a little while if anyone has any questions. You guys can call us and talk to me individually, but thank you all for coming.
So this presentation was videotaped, so we will put it on Edline on the counseling page within the next couple days. So if you forgot anything, you can view it. Thank you.